Hello and a very warm welcome. It's 9 p.m. IST and we are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. I am Molly Gambhir and this is Gravitas with a new look but the same old spirit. Let's get started. Our top story tonight is on Israel's attack on Rafah. According to the United Nations, Israel turned Rafah into hell on earth. The anger on the ground is palpable. Tonight on Gravitas, we tell you all about Benjamin Netanyahu's act of recklessness. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. We tell you how the West is preparing a drone wall against the Russian weapons. The police have arrested the head of a state-run hospital's forensic medicine department and the chief medical officer in relation with the Pune crash case for alleged manipulation of the blood samples and destruction of evidence in the case. 12 people have been injured as turbulence hit a Qatar Airways flight. Days after, a person died and several were injured because of turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight. With incidents of turbulence on the rise, do airline safety regulations need an overhaul? Should wearing seatbelts on all flights at all times become mandatory? What can be done to make flying safe again? That is our Gravitas campaign. All this and more coming up for you. Tonight, our top story is about the Israeli strike on Rafah. Particularly, it's about one man's recklessness, brazen and selfish pursuit of political power. Just take a look at the pictures on your screen. This is the city of Rafah today. Do you hear that? That's a sound of pain and anguish. Over the weekend, Israel turned Rafah into hell on earth. Those are the words of the United Nations. Israel's strike on Rafah killed at least 40 people in a tent camp.
Her husband and the one in her stomach. She was the only one we had. She was the only one and she's gone. She was the only one.
As shocking images came out of Rafah showing mass casualties, world leaders once again condemned Israel's action, urging it to observe the Friday ruling of the International Court of Justice. Israel's military stated that Sunday's air attack was based on precise intelligence. They claimed to have eliminated 2 Hamas fighters. However, if the strike was based on precise intelligence, how did they manage to kill 35 civilians? Isn't the death of 2 Hamas operatives at the cost of 35 Palestinian lives A reckless gamble, to say the least. The attack took place in the Tel Al-Sultan neighborhood, where thousands were sheltering after Israeli forces began their ground offensive over 2 weeks ago. From the Israeli strike, more than half of the dead were women, children, and elderly people. Health officials in Hamas-run Gaza saying that the death toll was likely to rise as more people caught in the blaze were in a critical condition with severe burns. By daylight, the camp that Israel attacked was a smoking wreckage of tents, twisted metal and charred belongings. Hospitals in Rafah, including the International Committee of the Red Cross Field Hospital, were unable to handle all the wounded. Some were moved to hospitals in Khan Yunis, which is located further north in Gaza. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees called the situation horrifying. In a tweet, they summed up the situation saying, and I'm quoting, "Gaza is hell on earth." The French President Emmanuel Macron said he was outraged over Israel's attacks. So did Germany. The EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell urged Israel to follow the International Court of Justice ruling. In West Asia, in fact, also Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia condemned the Israeli attack. On Monday, amid the global outcry, Israel's top military prosecutor called the airstrike very grave. She said that an investigation was underway and said that the IDF regrets any harm to civilians. Listen to this.
Naturally, in a war of such scope and intensity, difficult events also happen. Some incidents, like last night's incident in Rafah, are very grave. The details of yesterday's incident are still under an investigation, which we are committed to conducting to the fullest extent. The IDF regrets any harm to non-combatants during the war.
Still, despite the global outcry, Israeli tanks continue to bombard eastern as well as central areas of Rafah on Monday. 8 more people lost their lives. All this is the reckless pursuit of one man's goal. I am talking about Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You see, in the past few weeks, 2 international courts, both based in The Hague, have tried to hold Israel accountable for its actions. While the top prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, has sought arrest warrants for Netanyahu, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, has ordered Israel to halt its offensive on Rafah. Decisions by both the courts have been met with fury in Israel, and Netanyahu has also reacted with a lot of anger. Despite the ICJ ruling, despite international censure, despite its closest ally, the US, warning against it, Israel has continued to be reckless as far as the lives of Palestinians are concerned. Time and again, the Israeli Prime Minister has brazened it out. He called the ICC prosecutor anti-Semitic. He has flouted international rules of law. He has tried to threaten and intimidate international court. He has rejected multiple truce calls, even when Hamas accepted the last one. He has banned media organizations. He has defied Israel's only staunch ally, and he has shown no signs of altering the strategy. It's a pattern of recklessness. The opinion among foreign policy experts is this, that Netanyahu's wartime decision-making is mainly motivated by his personal interest of staying in power. That Netanyahu is essentially dragging out the war for as long as possible for his own political survival. And why, you may ask? You see, he knows that the moment the war comes to a halt, Israelis will focus even more resolutely on investigating the failures of October 7. They will push for early elections to vote him out of office. He knows the pressures he is facing within his own country. Families of the hostages are leading calls for a ceasefire. Since late January, Israeli citizens have been pushing for early elections and the removal of Netanyahu. And then on Sunday, opposition leader and former Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid accused Netanyahu of trying to cause anarchy. This after Netanyahu's 32-year-old son shared a video that appeared to show a reservist calling for a mutiny against the country's defense minister, Yoav Gallant. The Israeli military said it was launching an investigation. The incident marked a bad week for Netanyahu's government. The longer the world allows this recklessness to continue, the more the Palestinians will suffer. Netanyahu is clearly reluctant to accept any end to the war as of now, and he will continue to claim that the only way to bring back the hostages is through military pressure against Hamas in Rafah. But you see, the longer the Israeli guns roar in Gaza, the longer that goal will take to be achieved. How long then will Netanyahu be allowed to be reckless till peace is given a chance? And as Israel's Rafah offensive rages on, Iran-backed Lebanese outfit Hezbollah has issued a big warning to Israel. Hezbollah has warned Israel that it is preparing for a surprise attack. In a televised speech, Hezbollah's Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah told Israel to be ready for surprises. Exactly what kind of surprises? Remember, Hezbollah, which emerged as a strong force during the Lebanon civil war, has been engaged in fighting Israel in a show of support, basically, for the Palestinians in Gaza. The Lebanon-based group has exchanged fire with Israel at Israel's northern border for months now. Now, Hezbollah says that Israel's own leaders have admitted they have still not achieved any of the goals in the Gaza war. And this follows Israeli National Security Council head Zachi Hanegbi's admission that they have not still achieved any of their strategic goals, and it may take years. After the tough week that Israel has had last week, Nasrallah listed the number of setbacks for Israel. The Hezbollah leader also accused Israel of not respecting international resolutions and launching violent raids on Rafah, despite the ICJ's order. So what exactly does Hezbollah plan to do? It's not clear, but we will continue to monitor the developments very closely. Let's now shift our focus to Europe, where Russia's superior war machinery continues to make the NATO's eastern flank members very, very nervous. And as a result, 6 NATO countries are joining forces to build a so-called drone wall to protect their borders. You heard that right. The NATO states along the US-led bloc's eastern flank are preparing to bolster their protection against what they termed unfriendly countries. And this is going to be done using drones. Announcing the decision on Friday, Lithuania's Interior Minister, Agne Bilotet, said that the move comes at a time when the world is witnessing a rapid pace of drone development, fed by the war in Ukraine. As per reports, the drone wall in the works is expected to add to physical barriers and surveillance systems. And it does not stop at drones. The NATO members bordering Russia in Europe are also beefing up their borders with fortifications, hubs, and telecommunication systems. The other NATO states taking part are Lithuania's Baltic neighbors, Latvia and Estonia, as well as Poland, Finland and Norway. Details such as funding, the timeline, the technical aspects of the project are not clear at the moment, but reports say that the European Union funds could play a role. In fact, reports also suggested that each NATO country had to do its homework. Apart from coordinating with other NATO allies, each country has been focused on boosting its border infra. The 6 countries taking part in the drone wall project met in the Latvian capital last week. They discussed security threats as well as the issue of non-military tactics like instrumentalized migration, citing past instances where Russia or its ally Belarus sent masses of undocumented asylum seekers from Africa and West Asia over their borders. More than 2 years of the war in Ukraine has spurred lightning-fast innovations in airborne, land-based, waterborne drones. Since the war in Ukraine started 2 years ago, NATO nations bordering Russia have worried that they could be the next target after all. Their efforts at ramping up defenses at the border are driven by fears that the Baltic Sea could become Putin's playground from where he can terrorize other members of the NATO. Finland, for that matter, which joined the NATO in 2023, shares an 832-mile border with Russia. They have accused Russia of weaponizing migration against the Nordic nation. Of course, Russia denies this claim, but the Finnish government fears what it calls a hybrid attack by Russia. They say it could restart at any moment. Finland, by the way, has a conscription army, meaning military service is compulsory for men. And as part of its efforts to safeguard its border, Finland plans to change those rules so as to allow thousands of reservists to help patrol its border with Russia. Meanwhile, Poland, last week, Poland signed an agreement with the US for the delivery of a $960 million airspace reconnaissance system. The system basically will help Poland monitor its northeastern borders. And this means that Poland will be the second country in the world to use this system. The country has also boosted defense spending this year to about 4% of the GDP. Its goal, like other nervous members of the NATO, is to strengthen its armed forces following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And as part of its efforts, Poland will receive 4 aerostats, or moored balloons, which will be stationed at posts along the eastern and northeastern borders of Poland, assisting Poland's air defense system as well as the coastal observation system. Radar suspended from the balloons will monitor the sky as far as Ukraine, Belarus, and the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. From the Polish airspace, they have the ability to detect a wide range of objects, by the way, like missiles, aircraft, drones, as well as surface vessels in a range of over 300 kilometers. Meanwhile, Lithuania's State Border Guard Service also has a new drone unit. They are currently building up stocks of drones as well as counter-drone systems, all of this in preparation for a potential Russian assault. In Europe, not a week goes by without another stark warning about the growing potential of a Russian attack on one of the European countries, especially if Ukraine loses the war. But are their fears justified is the question. Will Russia really target NATO members? Remember, if Russia indeed attacks any one of the NATO members, it would push the US in direct confrontation with Russia, sparking a World War III. It's because the NATO follows collective defense. An attack on one is an attack on all. So does Russia really want that? Experts don't think so. Whether or not Russia will attack is superseded by a much bigger question, in fact. And in that lies the actual fear of the US-led military bloc. It is the question of whether the NATO will be able to handle Russia's superior war machinery. You see, in the past 2 years of the war, the Kremlin's war machinery has shown resilience. Resilience in the face of Western sanctions aimed at isolation and crippling the Russian economy. Still, even though NATO countries kept scraping at the bottom of the barrel to arm Ukraine as its own stockpile ran low, Russia continued to manufacture, produce, and deploy the latest weapons at a much faster pace. Ukraine just could not keep up. Hence, today it is outnumbered and outgunned on the battlefield. 2 years later, Russia is showing no signs of abating. It has now, in fact, made a new push in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. And therein lies the NATO's real dilemma. Is Ukraine now NATO's pipe dream? Does it really deserve more attention after 2 years of the war? That's the question that is haunting the West. If you have been following the news, you would be aware of the Pune crash story. It's a horror story, one which has jolted India. I am talking about the Pune crash case. It's about a 17-year-old boy who allegedly crashed his speeding car into a bike. 2 innocent lives were cut short. The police claimed the 17-year-old accused was drunk at the time. Let me tell you about the latest twist in the case. It's a murky saga with a series of big questions revolving around the actions of the police and also the doctors. Yes, doctors. Were they hand in glove? Did they help cover up the truths? Let's tell you why we are asking these questions tonight. Before that, some context here, in case you are not aware already. The teen was caught but granted bail within 15 hours with some conditions. What were the conditions? He was asked to write a 300-word essay on accidents, work with the traffic police for 15 days, and undergo counseling and treatment for his drinking habit. The fact that he got bail within hours of the incident and the bail conditions led to angry reactions. The boy is the son of a prominent realtor in Pune, by the way, and the police earlier arrested the father. The teenager has been sent to an observation home till the 5th of June. Now, in the latest, the police have arrested the head of a state-run hospital's forensic medicine department and the chief medical officer. What for? For alleged manipulation of the blood samples and destruction of evidence in the case. Can you believe that? The third arrested person works under the head of the hospital's forensic medicine department. A court has remanded the three in police custody till the 30th of May. The police, in fact, told the court that some financial transactions had taken place to change the blood samples, and they needed to search the houses of the accused in connection with it. According to the police, the juvenile's blood samples were thrown into a dustbin and replaced with the blood samples of another person on the instructions of the head of the hospital's forensic medicine department. Samples being thrown into a dustbin? Doctors being arrested now? What's going on? Were the doctors hand in glove? Were they paid off? Did they forget their moral and ethical duty and let money blind them? There are a lot of questions, and above all, there is a lot of anger. Also because murky details just continue to come out. We earlier told you about the major twist in the story. We told you what the Pune police commissioner had said about an attempt being made to frame a driver instead of the 17-year-old accused in the case. We also told you how 2 police officers were suspended for neglecting their duties in the case. The 2 officers posted at the Ayurveda police station were suspended as they did not inform the wireless control room about the accident. We cannot let our roads become death traps. We cannot let lives be snatched away in such a cruel manner. Imagine what the victims' family members and friends had to go through the minute they got that dreaded call informing them about what had happened. When they had to go to receive the body, imagine their plight. Nobody should have to go through this. These horrific incidents make one's blood boil. Meanwhile, speaking of horrific incidents and our roads becoming death traps, there's another disturbing incident, and viewer discretion is advised. A Noida resident died on Sunday morning after he was allegedly hit by a speeding Audi car. According to the police, the incident took place around 6:30 a.m. and the car was being driven swiftly and negligently. In fact, the victim was tossed in the air for some distance. It is disturbing and horrific. CCTV footage showed the victim being struck by a white Audi. How is this okay? How can lives be snatched away like this? What is it going to take to make our roads safe? What is it going to take to ensure that more lives are not taken away like this? Is it time that airlines revise the rules of flying? I ask that because of the terrible flight mishaps that have been happening around the world. On Sunday, a Qatar Airways flight was headed to Dublin from Doha. While flying over Turkey, the plane was hit with turbulence. 12 people got injured. The flight landed in Dublin little before 1 p.m. local time. On arrival, it was met by emergency services, including airport police and the fire and rescue department. 8 of the injured were taken to the hospital after assessment. Imagine sustaining injuries due to turbulence. Until a few days ago, it would have sounded odd. But after what happened aboard the Singapore Airlines flight last week, it's not too difficult to digest. That plane, remember, dropped 6,000 feet due to turbulence. A passenger died, 30 others were injured. And now we have another such turbulence-related incident in a matter of days. The fact is, incidents of turbulence are increasing around the world. For the longest time, flight turbulence has been a manageable affair. It is very common after all. In the US alone, for example, about 65,000 aircraft suffer moderate turbulence every year. 5,500 run into severe turbulence. But now we have people dying or landing in the ICU because of turbulence. Clearly, things have changed. While aircraft are equipped with sophisticated weather radar systems to detect and avoid turbulence, there are certain types of turbulence that can be harder to spot. One of them is clear air turbulence. It can strike without warning and is one of the biggest causes of weather-related aviation accidents. It is the one that sent the Singapore Airlines flight shaking and people being thrown around the cabin. Some passengers were thrown out of their seats and went on to hit the ceiling. Clear air turbulence cannot be seen by the naked eye. It's also undetectable by onboard sensors. Even satellites cannot see this kind of turbulence. And the bad news is, climate change is making clear air turbulence more common. Let me explain why that's happening. Turbulence is an irregular motion of the air. And what is climate change doing? It's increasing the temperature difference between the warm and the cold air masses. And this air and these two types of air collide to form the jet stream in the upper atmosphere. And as the temperature difference between them is increasing, it's making the jet stream less stable and causing more turbulence. My point here is simple. Things have changed. The frequency and severity of turbulence is not the same as it used to be, say, a decade ago. Then the question is, why should our rules stay the same? If bad turbulence is the new normal, shouldn't we start adapting to it? Shouldn't our rules evolve? We do fasten our seatbelts when the plane takes off or lands. We also do so when there is a warning for turbulence. But like I said, clear air turbulence cannot be detected. So then what's the solution? Keeping our seatbelts on at all times, perhaps? But you see, the onus should not be on the passenger alone. It should be on the airline and the aviation authorities. If you are welcoming travelers aboard, it has to be ensured that they have a safe experience, that they don't come out of the flight with injuries. Even if this involves putting inconvenient rules in place and asking people to wear their seatbelts at all times. Yes, that might be convenient for the passengers, but it's safe. And we need to make flying safe again. Clear air turbulence is predicted to be 4 times as common by 2050, 4 times more common. There's simply no time to lose. The authorities need to act now. In the meantime, here are a few tips to stay safe when experiencing turbulence. Keep your seatbelts on for sure. Do not walk around unless you absolutely have to. Be mindful of the baggage kept in the overhead storage area. Book a seat near the wingspan in the center of the plane for a smooth flying experience. By doing that, you will be near the plane's center of mass, which basically means that you will be less likely to be affected by wind, drag, and lift. The front of the plane also experiences lesser turbulence than the seats at the back, which are more affected by wind hitting the tail of the aircraft. Of course, not everyone will be able to secure the safer seats, the so-called safer seats, but you can consider doing so while booking a flight the next time. And speaking of climate change causing turbulence, it's also, of course, causing extreme weather events that are wreaking havoc around the world. While some areas are suffering from extreme heat waves, some are ravaged by floods, resulting in deaths, displacement, and destruction. In the last 24 hours, at least 16 people have been killed. In India and Bangladesh, a cyclone Remal made a landfall, while at least 18 have died across the US as several parts were hit by a deadly storm. Our next report telling you more.
Parts of India and Bangladesh were hit by the year's first cyclone late on Sunday. A severe cyclone Remal made landfall. Strong winds and heavy rains brought extensive damage and disruption, forcing millions to evacuate over the past 2 days. The cyclone tore through Bangladesh's southern port of Mongla and the adjoining Sagar Islands in India's West Bengal. It left behind a trail of devastation, uprooting several trees, destroying infrastructure and property. Roofs were blown away, electricity poles were knocked down, resulting in significant power disruption in various parts. Swinging into action, authorities tried to mitigate the impact by evacuating people, shutting schools, and suspending flights. The cyclone has caused multiple deaths and is weakening after hours of its landfall. Extreme weather events have caused distress in other parts of the world too. 18 people, including 4 children, lost their lives in the US. Tornadoes and other extreme storms hit the US. Several states, including Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, were hit by storms. After the storms hit the Southern Plains region starting late Saturday, hundreds of thousands of people were left without power. Experts say extreme weather events will continue to be a threat for millions in the United States. Almost every part of the world has seen some kind of extreme weather event. From floods to heat waves and massive storms, experts link many of these events to climate change. Though such events are natural phenomena and have occurred throughout the history, experts still believe that climate change has very clearly made them far more likely and destructive.
The British Prime Minister is in a mess. A mess of his own making, by the way. You see, last week he announced early elections to be held in July, but clearly he ignored the mood of the voters. The Tories were 20 points behind the Labour to begin with. And now, here's another poll serving as a sad realization for Rishi Sunak. The thought of the Tories staying in power is even less appealing to voters than the prospect of Jeremy Corbyn entering Downing Street was 5 years ago. You see, YouGov asked voters to imagine that the Conservative Party won the elections. The results were something like this. 59% voters would be dismayed or disappointed if the Tories remained in power after the 4th of July. 59%, more than half of the voters. They don't want Sunak at 10 Downing Street. Only 15% said they would be delighted or pleased. 15% said they wouldn't mind, while 11% did not know. Now, let me tell you what happened 5 years ago. Boris Johnson won a landslide victory against Corbyn. At that time, YouGov carried out a similar poll. 52% said that they would be dismayed or disappointed if Labour leader Corbyn won. 28% said they would be delighted or pleased, while 9% said they wouldn't mind Corbyn at 10 Downing Street. What I'm trying to tell you is that Sunak now faces worse odds at the election than Corbyn did in 2019. The polling results showing the mountain that Sunak has to climb to turn around the voter sentiment. That too in just 6 weeks. Even those who voted for the Tories to be in power in 2019 are now abandoning the party. Only 38% of them would be happy to see the Tories re-elected this year. Only 38%. And even among those who plan to stick around, only 29% are in Rishi Sunak's favour. Meaning the Tories are losing support, no doubt, but it is Sunak who is the least popular. And somehow he is still managing to disappoint the voters further. Case in point, his bid to reintroduce mandatory national service if he wins. This is the first major policy plan the man has unveiled since the election announcement. For those who might not be aware, national service was first implemented in the UK in 1947 by the Labour government. It was compulsory for men between the ages of 17 and 21 to serve in the armed forces for 18 months. They also remained on a reserve list for 4 years. This military conscription was struck down in 1960. A similar plan was introduced in 2010 when David Cameron became the Prime Minister. It was known as the National Citizen Service. It entailed encouraging 16-year-olds to take part in activities like outdoor education-style courses, but it did not include a military component. Now, Sunak is also planning something similar. What is his national service scheme? It's not that clear at this point. All we know is the proposed plan would require 18-year-olds to participate in some form of national service for a period of 12 months. They will have the option to apply for full-time military placements or spend one weekend a month volunteering in their community. The 18-year-olds can volunteer for 25 days over a year with organizations like the NHS, the fire service, ambulance, search and rescue, and critical local infrastructure. Labour lambasted the proposal as a desperate attempt. A Labour spokesperson, in fact, said that it's a $3 billion unfunded commitment from a Tory party which already crashed the economy. Another called it a half-baked gimmick. The Tories have announced several cuts to the British troops, by the way, and now they are looking for volunteers to fill in. Sunak is facing attacks from all directions. In a stinging critique of the Conservative Party's fortunes under Sunak, a Tory peer, Lord Goldsmith, said that Sunak has damaged the party almost beyond repair, and he will probably disappear to California, quote unquote, following the general election. What will Sunak do next? Is there any chance to sway the voters in his favour, or has that ship already sailed? Tech giant Google recently launched its AI search results feature called AI Overviews. And the feature has not gone down too well with the users. And why is that? Well, it is reportedly giving misleading and wrong answers to simple queries. Now imagine this. You're making pizza at home. Everything is perfect, except you are unable to get the cheese to stick to the pizza. So what do you do next? Maybe you turn to Google for help. But the suggestion you receive from Google is not just bizarre, but dangerous as well. Its suggestion is to add glue to the sauce so that the cheese can stick to the pizza base. Adding glue, can you believe that? And that's not the only bizarre response, by the way. Take a look at these responses. Humans should consume at least one small rock a day. Barack Obama is a Muslim, although in reality, Obama is a practicing Christian. Elephants have 2 feet. Running with scissors is a cardio exercise. I could go on and on, but you get the point here. In fact, social media is flooded with screen grabs of Google's wrong, misleading, and in some cases controversial answers. After receiving much flack from users, Google has said that it is taking action to improve its AI overviews feature. A Google spokesperson said, and I'm quoting, "We are taking swift action where appropriate under our content policies and using these examples to develop broader improvements to our system, some of which have already started to roll out." Currently available to users in the US, Google's AI search results feature a summary at the top of the page. The AI summarizes what it found on the internet with links to the online sources that supplied the information. And this happens to be one of the biggest changes to Google's world-leading search engine in 25 years. The change comes as Google feels growing pressure from AI-powered search engines like Perplexity, and from the repeated rumors that OpenAI is building its own AI search tool. While similar AI tools like ChatGPT have also come under scrutiny for often providing incorrect or misleading information, Google's search engine providing such answers has raised a lot of concern among experts. According to a report, Google's search engine accounts for more than 90% of the global market and remains a go-to search engine for many. With Google AI search engine feature giving wrong answers, the question is, why release a feature when it is far from perfect? Is the fear of getting left behind in the AI race the reason behind such shoddy tech? In today's digital age, the world is already grappling with the rise in misinformation, disinformation, fake news. Will tweaking the search engine be enough to stop the spread of such misleading information? Most importantly, is artificial intelligence technology reliable? On that note, we're taking a very short break. Stay with us. You're watching Gravitas.
Yoga, the age-old Indian practice of wellness.
Ayurveda, healing through diet, herbal remedies, and meditation.
2 timeless traditions.
2 priceless Indian gifts to the world.
From well-being to perfect health.
How can you incorporate yoga and Ayurveda in daily life? As the world gears up for International Yoga Day,
WION celebrates India's gift to mankind on this special series.
welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. South Africans are going to the polls on Wednesday. In the last 3 months, all the political parties did just about everything in their power to win the hearts of the people. Party leaders were seen not just campaigning door to door, but also shaking their legs and dancing to impress the voters. Take a look at this report compiled by our correspondent, Calvin Ongmo.
A unique feature about South Africans. They dance and sing at every occasion. And the politicians are no exception. Regardless of age, every political party leader has moved to the beat to impress their constituents. More than an election campaign, it could easily be mistaken for a dance contest. President Ramaphosa did not miss a beat here, DJing and entertaining the crowd. He also did not miss the chance to groove to Grammy Award winner Tyla's hit song Water. While ending it with a Bollywood dance number with the Indian diaspora. That's not all. President Ramaphosa is not the only one who was, should we say, dancing for the votes. EFF leader Malema proved he is young and fit and can dance more freely, unlike his much older rivals. And then there's the iconic visual, the controversial former president Jacob Zuma doing what he does best. People may have different opinions about him, but when it comes to singing and dancing, the 82-year-old has few peers.
Now that all the singing and dancing is done, South African citizens will be the final judge on Wednesday, May 29th, to decide on who will be the party to govern them for the next 5 years. This is Calvin Ongmo from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
Time now for Gravitas Recall. It is the 27th of May, and on this day, back in 1964, India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, passed away at the age of 74. His death anniversary is celebrated every year to honor his legacy and his achievements. Nehru played a major role in Indian politics and in forming contemporary India. He laid the foundations for several institutions and policies that guided India's growth and development. His focus on education and scientific advancement led to the establishment of premier institutions like the Indian Institutes of Technology and the Indian Institutes of Management. Nehru was also adored by children who affectionately called him Chacha Nehru. So much so that his birth anniversary, which falls on November 14, is celebrated as Children's Day every year. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
Africa's youngest nation goes to the polls in December as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic